We're live. All right. Good evening, everybody. My name is Alex Vidal, president of Related ISG International Realty and host of the show you are watching tonight. Inquiring minds want to know. We're doing a very special evening edition, first time ever that we do it at night. If you like what you're going to hear today, and for any realtor that sells Miami, you want to hear this episode, share it, like it, love it. Let's get the word out there about this amazing gentleman that we're interviewing today. Today's episode, as always, brought to you by Related ISG International Realty. If you want to work for the best brokerage that's connected to the most important people in business and in real estate, not only in Miami, but across the country, call me, text me, DM me, Related ISG International Realty. It's also brought to you where we're doing our interview this evening with this amazing backdrop at Brickell City Center, developed by the amazing Swire Properties. The president of Swire Properties is the gentleman sitting to my left, Kieran Bowers. Kieran,
Alex,
thanks for coming.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you for. I know you want to go home to your family, but
not at all. No.
Thank you for. Look at this
Don't
view.
want to interrupt that.
I know. I saw Richard Greenfield, who's behind the camera, is one of the on-site agents here at Brickell City Center, posted a photo of this view, and I said I want to interview Kieran, and I want to interview Kieran with that backdrop because that's where it's at.
Excellent. So this was arranged.
This was arranged. It was arranged. All right. You know the MO. 10, 15 minutes. Let's rock and roll. You ready?
Okay, sure.
All right, let's do it. Kieran, you're from a small town in England.
Yeah.
You are now president of Swire Properties, undoubtedly one of the largest developers in the world. And there's 9 countries where you've lived in between that. Tell us a little bit about your path to how you became president of Swire.
So I graduated from university when I was 19 and studied Japanese at college. So I wasn't really quite sure where that was going to take me, but I didn't really want to go to live in Japan for my life or focus a career in Japan. So I looked in the university library and looked at kind of what careers sort of would enable me to spend time in Asia, but not Japan focused. And a friend of mine actually sort of put the Swire career profile forward, and then it looked fantastic. So and it has a lot of lists of what you might be able to do, and it's a very broad, diversified conglomerate, as I'm sure some of your listeners will know. And so I applied. I managed to get in. It was either Swire or being a pilot for British Airways, or being a diplomat for the British government. So here I am.
What was it about Swire that intrigued you so much over the other 2 positions?
Well, I think it was the diversity. So the diversity of business. Cathay Pacific is the airline that Swire controls and manages. So that interested me. I had an interest in aviation. Had the property business, had a beverages business and a trading division. So it was this kind of broad array of business, and I kind of didn't know what I wanted to do at university. A lot of my contemporaries were going off to be either bankers or in advertising or management consultants. So I wasn't very clear on what I wanted to do, but I knew that I wanted to be internationally bound. So this
and that you have by far.
That I have, yeah. So that definitely hasn't disappointed. And the way the profiles are structured, generally every 3 to 4 years you change role, potentially change country, change business. So under the umbrella of this one organization, you can have incredibly different experiences. And yeah, that freshness appealed to me. It was very dynamic in the way that you could 1 minute be in Coca-Cola and the next minute you could be in Cathay Pacific in aviation.
That's amazing. That's right, because they're involved with Coca-Cola in Asia.
Yeah.
What are the 9, and this is not on here, but I want our viewers to understand this because this is going to segue into our next question.
Okay.
What are the 9 countries you've lived in?
Okay, right, let me see if I have to do this.
That's okay. Or most of them.
All right, so started in Hong Kong, then Japan, then in Karachi, Pakistan, then to Sri Lanka, Colombo in Sri Lanka, then Saudi Arabia, Riyadh, then to Amsterdam in the Netherlands, then back to Hong Kong, then up to Beijing, then back to Hong Kong, and now Miami.
Wow. And you were born in England?
I was born in England.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think anybody in life, whether you're the president of Swire, the president of brokerage, a realtor who's out there who's probably watching this, the hardest thing we deal with is change.
Yeah.
Even when it's as great as the changes that you've encountered throughout your career with all those changes. How did you, when you had those changes coming up, how did you approach that? Because I think that's something that a lot of people are still trying to figure out. I mean, encountering this change, what's the mindset or what's the system that you have in place to do that? Because those are not little changes; those are big moves.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's when you're looking at the cultural changes that you have to cope with. I mean, a good one for me was, for example, when I moved from Saudi Arabia to the Netherlands. Right, I mean, they're two very different ways of living life, and you have to have a certain degree of or you develop a cultural sensitivity that enables you to engage and enjoy, respect different people for their points of view and how they may have come across, or have that point of view. But whilst meanwhile trying to reconcile it with your own either value system or beliefs that you have. So cultural sensitivity, I think, is something that you can develop by having this exposure to so many different countries and places to live in. I think the other is you sort of have little footholds or cultural holds that you keep constant throughout those changes. For me, I would always find a sport. It could either be soccer or it could be rugby. You'd find a little group of, usually a quirky group in Pakistan, for example, that play football every Saturday. And you'd just go and play football, play a little bit of cricket with a group of people. It would be local people. It would be some expatriates who form this group. And something like that would find you a little niche in the town that you were living in. And some places are much more accessible than others, like big cities, Miami. I know London. Some people find those they're a little bit more intimidating. It's more difficult to find these groups. But in some of the more broad, diverse places that you go to culturally, like Saudi Arabia or Pakistan, then these little cultural footholds are very helpful.
So when you made those changes, it sounds like you looked for things that were common denominators that were of major interest in your life and try to look at those to connect to make the transition easier? Yeah.
You don't always find them, of course, so you have to adapt and maybe dilute your expectation a little bit. But yeah, they help ground you a little bit more.
Sure. Now, there's a guy that I interviewed a few weeks ago. He's the CEO of Lightspeed Virtual Technology, which is one of the largest online training systems out there. Bradley, amazing guy. Went out to Vegas to celebrate my wife's 40th and interview him as well when we were out there. One of my favorites so far. And he's got a Bradism. And the Bradism is most people miss opportunity because it's disguised as risk. What would you say would be the biggest risk that you've taken, and what did you learn from that our audience that's watching can learn?
I would say a recent risk actually relates to...
and it can be personal or professional.
Sure. Well, one on the career side, one recently that we had in Brickell City Centre. I won't sort of divulge the details of it, but it sort of was really a little bit of a leap of faith in some ways. And I guess the lesson there is that risk presents itself in many shapes or forms. You can always hedge risk legally. You can hedge risk financially. But at the end of the day, you have to make a call. You'll never have perfect symmetry of information. The upside of that, of course, is you get to sit pretty high when it goes in your direction, but it doesn't always go in your direction. I think you as a person and as a personality really have to understand and have sufficient self-awareness to know how comfortable you are with risk before you take it, because I think manage those expectations, because sometimes it doesn't work out and you have to wear it. And you need to be the person. Are you someone who can bounce back after that? Or are you going to be somebody who's going to maybe just overly self-analyze it? So it really, I think, links back to your personality and who you are. Are you a risk taker, and how much risk are you willing to take?
Sure. Craig, as you know, Craig Studnicki, owner of ISG, has a saying, success has many fathers, failure is an orphan.
Yeah.
It's very, very true. I know you're laughing. It's true. All right, now let's talk Miami. So there's multiple parts to this question.
Yeah.
And I think because of the fact that you've lived in 9 different countries, you're in major cities and smaller cities as well, your perspective on Miami is going to be different than somebody like myself who was born and raised in Miami. Yeah, I lived in Colorado, California, but my perspective on Miami is probably going to be different from yours. So let's go through these a little bit.
Okay, sure.
In your opinion, how does the rest of the world see Miami?
I think, and this is one of my key concerns really when I talk to some of the city leaders, is that the international perception of Miami is still, I think, Miami in the 1990s.
Okay.
Still a little bit of a resort place, a place where you go and have fun. I don't think the message that Miami is a serious trading hub or a nexus of business is really well understood or known to the broader international community. And I really think that's something that the community leaders need to start pushing forward a lot more. This is a place where serious business happens. It has amazing infrastructure for business. The services, the lawyers, the accountants, the management consultants, beyond all the other infrastructure that supports all that, and the banks. And I think that story needs to be better understood.
Okay. So if you were pitching this to somebody from outside, how would you say Miami compares to these other world-class cities?
I would say that it's a rising star. Huge potential. Definitely a city with ambition, heading in the right direction. It really just needs to go to that next level and I think promote itself in a fuller way.
Okay. And you've been in Miami, what, about 2 years now?
2 years now. Yeah.
How has it changed in the 2 years that you've been here?
Well, I think you're seeing the community sort of adapt a little more to, or getting more comfortable with Miami as being more prominent on the world stage. So a lot of people obviously talking about, well, Art Basel brought it to this point where it was taken to be more seriously as a design center. I do see the conversation moving in the right direction as to what it can do for business. I see that the debate on public transport is really becoming quite focused now, from being how we can better improve it to actual solutions and options. So the fact that that's being discussed as seriously and at the levels that's being discussed at is great for the city. So you really see these key sort of, I think, could potentially be obstacles, they're not yet, being discussed at a serious level.
To take Miami to that next level.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, what do you think is the main advantage that Miami has over all the other cities that you've lived in?
Well, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
That's for one. I mean, it has that just incredible geographical advantage of being on the water. The water is so easily accessible here. It's got incredible energy and dynamism. That tempo that you get, I think, with the collision between what you get from the American cultural experience and the South American cultural experience. It's got a wonderful dynamic there. I think it's got an incredible energy about it.
Yeah. And so does Brooklyn City Center, by the way. That's one of the reasons why I love coming here so much. But we're going to talk about Brooklyn City Center in a second. If you were to say your top thing about Miami that you love the most, what would it be?
I love the ability to, for example, in our office, and again, this is a bit of a career question, but, we have people from Honduras, Nicaragua, obviously families that originated from Cuba, Colombia. I mean, it's just incredible melting pot of multiple nations that have made this their home. And I think that's really quite unique. And with that, you get different, so many different perspectives and so many different inputs based on obviously their own cultural experience.
It almost takes the 9 countries that you lived in and put
it
in one spot, right?
Maybe I shouldn't have done 9. I should have just come here.
Yeah, it would have been easier. Yeah. The experience of living in 9 countries must have been amazing.
Yeah, but the experience of being here surrounded by people from 9 different countries is also
how old are your kids?
Stimulating. 8, 6.5, and 4.5.
So they've traveled to a few countries themselves.
Yeah, so 2 were born in Hong Kong. My youngest was born in Beijing in China. So they've lived in Hong Kong, they've lived in China, and are now here.
That's amazing. That's so cool. So cool. Let's talk Brooklyn City Center, where we are right now in Unit 3006, an amazing model unit by Stephen G., who's been a guest on the show, by the way. What was Swire's, 3-prong approach. What was Swire's motivation to buy Brooklyn City Center? Why is it such an exciting place to call home? And why should people be buying in Brooklyn City Center right now?
Right, okay. I may have to ask you to...
Yeah, we'll go. So let's start with, what was their motivation to build, to me, one of the most awesome projects I've ever been?
So I think the idea at the time was, Brickell Key obviously had been where Swire started its development and its history here in Miami. The ability to keep developing the quay obviously gets less and less as we invested in it. This was a natural extension. It's part of the city. It's an area we know we can execute really well. I think, relatively speaking, land prices here were pretty attractive and affordable. And I think it was a really big opportunity where there wasn't really a downtown retail presence. There wasn't a mixed use of any description really in Miami at that point. And that's what we do. And there was the ability to build a mixed use in a place which had a retail void and connect it to public infrastructure, which it does on the Metro Rail. So I think in terms of what is generally Swire's DNA, Brickell kind of fits it all.
And the spot where you guys were able to put all this together was the perfect location.
Yeah.
And it transformed
downtown, and it's got a lot of, I think, the economic pulses that we look for in terms of diversity. It already had residential diversity, but it's got a good presence of office. It had, I think, good hallmarks.
And here at Brickell City Center, you have all three. You have residential, office, and retail.
Yeah.
Why is it such an exciting place to call home? I mean, you've mentioned energy quite a few times, and I think there's no better word to describe Brickell City Center than the energy that's here.
Yeah.
Why would you call it such an exciting place to call home?
Well, I think it's part of the ongoing story of the development of the urban core of Miami, right? So there's just so much going on around us. It's not just what Brickell City Center has done to catalyse that. But you look around the city centre now, and it's really got a life. People are living it, walking it. Brickell City Centre itself was designed with a view to being part of the city. It's open, it's amenable, the retail is exposed. So it's not meant to sort of shy away from being the city. It is a key fundamental part of the city. And I think that helps bring the energy from the city inside the centre and outside in. I think it's just really where you see an urban centre maturing in a very dynamic way.
And why should somebody be buying the Brickell City Center right now? Right.
Well, I think there's not many locations where part of the amenity package includes 500,000 square feet of luxury shopping, luxury cinema, and an amazing diversity of food and beverage. And again, you get that connectivity where you can come down from your residence and walk straight through into the centre and get some of that energy and the good vibration. So I think that's part of it. And why now? As we see, basically the overall inventory that's left in the urban core is kind of gradually declining. And I don't think there's that much time really before those opportunities dry up and the next cycle begins. But there's not many projects on the horizon, so I don't.
And by the time that next cycle begins and they start building again, you're talking
exactly
a long time from now.
A long time from now.
All right. Let's get personal.
Yeah.
You ready?
Sure.
You mentioned sports. Right. That's question number 3.
Yeah. Okay.
And I know the answer to this. And the day I heard the answer to this, only my agents would know the answer to this. Something we'd be surprised to know about you.
All right, but I could surprise you with a different.
That's true. You could.
I could, right?
But go ahead.
Right. So something that you probably don't know about me. I have. I don't know if you have it in the US that if you represent a country, you get what's called a cap.
Okay.
A cap. So it means you basically have represented that country at a sport. Okay. So in the US, if you were to represent the US in soccer, you get a cap. It's actually in the old days was a physical cap that used to be given by the team manager. So I actually have represented Saudi Arabia in rugby.
In rugby?
In rugby.
How much do you weigh?
Then I used to weigh 90-something kilos.
So about 190, 200 pounds.
200 pounds. Now, it's not far off.
You don't look it.
But it shouldn't be anywhere near that.
Yeah.
Now it's more about the 85 zone. But yeah, that's what I played against Qatar, United Arab Emirates, and Oman.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I would have never pegged you as a rugby player.
There you go.
I know. You have the accent for it, though.
Well, there you go. Yeah.
So what's the one thing that people would be surprised about you that I do know?
That you do know. All right. So you're not going to let me off the hook, are you?
No, it's too great of a story not to share.
Well, when I was 17, I was struck by lightning.
And you survived.
And I survived. So 2 of my colleagues at the time didn't do so well.
Yeah.
So one of them had to be resuscitated, so I resuscitated him. And then
after being struck by lightning yourself?
After being struck by lightning myself, yeah. So don't recommend it, it's very unpleasant. And then the other colleague ended up having very serious burns, so he had to go and spend some time in hospital.
Okay.
So if you do go out, and there's lots of lightning in Florida, wear as little metal as possible.
And hang around you, because the chances of getting struck twice are slim to none.
Yeah, or don't, because I normally run like a very scared person in the other direction.
Now, how does the president of Swire unwind after work?
So I try to go back to see my kids. So they're still at the stage where they like reading stories before they go to bed. So that's a big part of how I unwind and forget the day. Read them a story. Usually don't make bath time, which they remind me of on a frequent basis. So read a story and then probably talk to my wife and open a bottle of wine. That's generally
awesome. Red or white?
Preferences for red.
Got it.
Yeah.
I had suggested opening a bottle of wine, but I was thinking it's Monday. I was coming off the weekend. I already had drank over the weekend. So
well, now you're really disappointed.
No. Damn. Next time. Next time. Now, you talked about sports already, and living in 9 countries, you've experienced all types of sports in your life. What's your favorite sport to watch, and what's your favorite sport to participate in?
Same answer for both, actually. Rugby. So rugby I will watch. In fact, I'm going next week to go back to the UK, see some friends, but also take my father to a rugby game of England versus New Zealand, which is a big clash, massive rivalry. So rugby is my favourite to watch and play, but I now only play touch. I don't play the full contact stuff. But my son recently has got into soccer, so I've had to start educating myself about football, which has been...
How old's your son?
He's 6.5.
Okay.
Yeah.
Off camera, I'll give you an entire rundown. All three of well, I have a 21-year-old. That's how I got into real estate.
Yeah.
But I have an 11-year-old and I have 8-year-old twins, and they all play competitive soccer. We just got back from a soccer tournament in Sarasota.
Oh, great.
So
Excellent.
We travel all the time for soccer.
Yeah.
Last question, then you can go home and read to your kids.
Yeah.
Any book, podcast, or TED Talk recommendation for the audience?
Okay, so... slightly offbeat one for a book. So it's a book called Black Box Thinking by Matthew Syed, who was quite a well-known journalist for the FT and The Economist. The reason I like it is because it's got a link back to aviation, which is something that interested me. So this guy basically writes a book about how the aviation industry is very closely linked to learning from mistakes of the past, and the information is globally shared. So after there's one of these tragic accidents, all the learnings of that accident are then shared globally through the ICAO organization to individual airlines, where they try and put in procedures and checklists to prevent these things happening again. And the point he makes is why the same doesn't happen in the healthcare industry. So he links the two and correlates why the hierarchies between like a captain and a first officer, but a doctor and a junior doctor, why those two can't be the same, and why statistically it would have been so much beneficial for us as a human race to develop had that learning culture been sort of the same for healthcare. It's a really good book. You can read it in probably 3-4 days. Okay. Very accessible, not dull. Right. So that's one. The other one I saw was actually the speech at Harvard University that J.K. Rowling gave. Okay. And this is actually where I'd probably I'd comment a little bit on failure. I think she gives an amazing speech on the benefits of failure and how as an organization we should embrace failures, our own failures. And I think that's I recommend it. It's about 10-15 minutes. You can see it on
That's a TED Talk?
It's actually a, I think they call it the inaugural speech, or the speech basically when everyone's graduating from university. They bring someone famous in to speak. And I think her message is very clear. It's basically failure is something that we should all accept, embrace, learn from. Don't shy away from it. It makes us as much as success does. Absolutely. And she's got some great little takeaways from that. Very easy, because we all come across it and we will try and sometimes deny it, but actually it could sometimes be your best friend.
I think if you were to look at the common denominator of the people I've had on this show, they're there because of all the failures they had leading up to that. They had very, very few successes. There was many failures till they got to that one big success.
Yeah, so what you see is the tip of the iceberg, but it's key, I think, to understand there's been a lot behind it, which sometimes we shy away from saying, but they should be there. Be proud of them.
Kieran, I cannot thank you enough for being on the show. Thank you all for watching.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. If you want to say anything, I'm going to go behind the camera and turn it off, but thanks again, man.
Thanks for the privilege. Thank you.